There we are. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Dear Producer Sundance panel. We're very excited to have you all here today and welcome these amazing producers and appreciate them coming out on the Saturday at the end of the festival after a long 2 weeks on the ground. Diane actually is still there. I love doing these like right at the end because you guys are all like kind of really tired and so you tend to talk a lot, which is good. And give us the real scoop before you have too much time to process it. Oop, I raised my hand. I have nothing to say. Um, so let's start with just a quick introduction of everybody. Also, too, for the participants here, the chat should be open. You're welcome to talk to each other in the chat, say where you're from, where you're calling in from. And we're going to do just a little around the room and have you guys just, if you could each introduce yourselves and tell us a few sentences about your film. And I would also love to know like the years it took from when you first came on the movie to your Sundance premiere. So why don't we start with Kim?
Hello, I'm Kimberly Parker Zox, and I produced Hot Sean Shake Your Booty! Exclamation point, the exclamation point being very important to me, from the U.S. Dramatic Competition. We were lucky, our co-writer and director, Joseph Kubota Wladyka, won Best Director, which was so cool, yesterday. And we actually were picked up by Sony Pictures Classics during the festival, which was also a blessing. So we'll be having a theatrical release this fall, and it's a film that stars Oscar nominee Rinko Kikuchi as an amateur ballroom dancer in Tokyo who competes with her husband Luis, who is originally from Mexico City. And so while they're competing, he unexpectedly dies. And so she's thrown into grief and kind of gets yanked out of it by dance, by friendship, and by a sexy new man named Fadir. And it has choreographed dance sequences, and it's very fun and very different from the director's previous work, which was all very macho, like Narcos and like thrillers and stuff like that. So this is more like his real personality, which is really refreshing for me, being his longtime friend.
Nice. And how long did it take for you to get this movie to a
Oh,
screen?
yeah, so I produced Joseph's last film, which was like a thriller, starring Kaylee Reese, who was a professional boxer. And so we had just finished that film and he started basically iterating on ideas for his next one. But he sent me the first draft. I don't read his first drafts because I think he gets just a little, he wants to make sure he feels good about sending it out beyond his co-writer, Nikki. And so I got the first draft January of 2022. And we filmed in Tokyo last year, like November, December. So it was actually a pretty quick turnaround compared to some of the other films that I've produced.
That is very fast, yes. Also, I realized someone pointed out the chat is not enabled. I'm figuring it out as we're talking. Sarah, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I produced a documentary in the US competition called Joy Bubbles. It's a film about a phone hacker, Joy Bubbles, who was blind and he was also very eccentric. He figured out when he was a little kid how to hack the phone system with whistling. And the film kind of traces his life story going from a little kid hacking the phones all the way until the end of his life. And he was someone who lived half of his life as a 5 year old. When he was older, he decided to live the 5 year old. And he also used the phone in a lot of different ways to connect with people. He had like like answering machine outgoing messages that told stories and really was an inspirational figure. So our documentary is his voice. We have recordings of him speaking, and it kind of is him telling his own life story. You know, so yeah, and I joined that film in 2020. So it's been about 6 years that I've been on it. The director had been working on it for a long time before that as well. So it is a real journey that we've been on together to get this movie out in the world.
Wonderful. Mynette?
Hi, everybody. I produced a film called The Huntress or La Cazadora, which was in World Cinema Dramatic Competition. The film is about a woman, based on a true story about a woman in Juarez, Mexico, who in 2013 ended up killing two bus drivers 2 days in a row, and then claiming credit for it because she wrote an anonymous letter to the newspaper saying that it was revenge for a sexual assault. She was never found, so this story imagines who she might have been and what her motivations were. It stars Adriana Paz, who was in Emilia Perez. She won Cannes Best Actress for that. And it's by Suzanne Andrews Correa, who's this is her debut, their debut feature. They previously won the Sundance Short Jury Prize for Green. Suzanne has been working on this project for nearly 10 years on their own. And then I came on board in 2020 and tried to raise money for it in the US. Didn't have much luck. Brought on board my producing partners, Gabriela Maire and Eder Campos, with whom I produced I Carry You With Me, which premiered at Sundance in 2020. And then they were able to find the money out of Mexico. So, and I'm the only gringa on the film.
Nice. Diane?
Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Becker. I'm a producer of the AI doc, or How I Became an Apocalyptimist. You can say that 5 times fast. Good luck. The film is co-directed by Daniel Rohr, who I did Navalny and Blink with, and Charlie Tyrell, who did an amazing short a number of years ago called My Dead Dad's Porno Tapes, which is probably the best titled film of all time. So you should check that out. Um, and it's produced with Shane Boris, who I've done a long collaboration with on Navalny and King Cole, and Jonathan Wong and Dan Kwan, who are, most of the team behind Everything Everywhere All at Once. We met them a number of years ago and, decided to team up together on a project about AI. Tristan Harris and Aza Raskin from the Center for Humane Technology. Knew Dan and John and were like, somebody has to talk about this. And, we thought we would make a film in a year because it was so urgent and timely. And it took almost 3 years to do because it turns out once you start talking about AI, once you start talking to people, there's so much to unpack. And it's almost the most Sisyphean task ever to try to talk about, the promise of this technology, the perils that it proposes, and this sort of narrow path that we talk about in terms of like not letting this technology or these companies tell us how to integrate this into our lives, but that we all have to take a personal responsibility because, it's not going anywhere and it is literally infiltrating every single corner of our existence. So we're here on a big launch for it. So, and it comes out on March 27th in theaters.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you guys all for those intros. I actually was not on the ground at Sundance this year. I have gone many, many years and I chose to stay home this year. But, it was hard watching from afar because it was the last festival in Park City. And, not everyone has the ability to get there. And so that's why I like doing these webinars because it kind of gives everyone a little on the ground perspective from the producers. And so just curious, how did it feel this year? Was it energetic? Was it a little too nostalgic, a little sad? Did it feel like a normal year? What was kind of the vibe of the festival? You're all also veterans and have been before, and so you all will have an opinion. But Sarah, did you have a take on how it felt this year?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I was there for a shorter time than I've been in the past, and I somehow even managed to not make it to Main Street. So my take is going to be fringe take. But my feeling was that it was a very sort of warm and friendly year. People really seemed happy to see each other, which is a really nice thing. There's some years where you feel like you're there and everybody's kind of mad, and I didn't really feel that this year. It was like it seemed like I spoke to someone who works at Sundance, and they were like, I feel like we finally figured out operations. It's running like a real well-oiled machine this year. And of course, that's always the last year you're doing something, but it did feel very much more organized maybe than some past years have been, and just like there was a lot of kindness and positivity interpersonally. I didn't see any other films because I was only there for a couple days, but I spoke to a lot of people. People really seemed to be watching movies, which seemed nice. That seemed like top priority. And maybe that's just who I was chatting with, where they weren't like necessarily party people, but movie people. But it had kind of a warm and fuzzy feeling to me.
Nice. Diane, how'd you feel?
I'm still here and I'm still standing, which is kind
That's
of,
true.
I got a cold the week before Sundance, so I thought, all right, I'm completely immune. And then everybody in my condo started falling one by one. And now I'm like, am I getting another cold? Like, what's happening?
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo a lot of what Sarah said. I think maybe the state of the world is so terrible that like the inside of Park City was like really warm and welcoming. And I think everyone's just like happy to be with each other. I mean, our industry is obviously under a lot of change and stress. And I think at the end of the day, we all show up at Sundance hoping to be inspired, which I definitely was. And, I didn't get to see a ton of movies, which isn't unusual for a year you come with a film. I come a lot when I don't have films, and then I really like just get to enjoy it. But I mean, people were talking about all the movies, people seem to be going, and I think, there was a lot of nostalgia. And probably the saddest thing about being at Sundance this year was like, I've been coming here for 30 years and there's no snow. And
Oh.
it's just been astonishing how dry it is.
Mynette.
For me, it's never that different. From one Sundance to the next, I took my first film there in 2009. It's a similar experience because I only ever go when I have a film premiering there. So I'm always there to like sell my movie, and I have a purpose. I go to parties to talk about my movie. But I think, the Sundance experience is different for everyone. And like I'm lucky to be a part of different communities like the Asian American filmmakers. With this Mexican film, I got invited to the Latinx parties. Film Independent has a big presence there. The producers have a big presence there. But it's funny because none of these there's not a lot of space for intersectionality. Like I
Mm.
feel like I barely got invitations to the Asian American events because I have a Mexican film. They're like, "What are you doing making a Mexican film instead of telling a story with an Asian American protagonist?" So it feels a little weird. Um, but I definitely felt the nostalgia. A lot of people went just because they wanted one last Park City experience. But the last time I went was 2020 with I Carry You With Me, and it felt smaller than that, even though it was the last year. There was less press. My publicist told me like normally, typical pre-pandemic, there'd be 600 press going to Sundance, and this year there was only like 200. And there were less screens. Like I remember getting the list of venues, and there were no screenings at the Prospector, the Egyptian, the Temple Theater, and the Racket Club. Like those screens were gone. Um, and there's like less films playing. Like there's 10 competition films instead of the usual 16 in each competition category. So it really felt like slimmed down, and the loss of screen space like mirrors the loss of screen space nationally. Like we lost 6,000 screens during the pandemic, right? So um, it felt weird and the same at the same time.
Sorry guys, the chat, I can't see. I turned it on. It's not working for everybody. If you have things you want to ask like me to pay attention to, just put it in the Q&A and I have my eye on it. So sorry about that. Kim, how about for you? And also was there, I assume, a lot of chatter about Boulder,
Yeah,
moving to Boulder?
there's a ton of chatter about Boulder. I mean, I think honestly, I did get a couple of kind of relieved comments from people who are native to Utah who are not really directly involved in the festival. Because I kind of chat with everyone, like I will be talking to an Uber driver, I will be talking to like basically everybody. So it was interesting. I think there was just a lot of nostalgia. But to me, and my first Sundance it was the Martha Marcy May Marlene year because I snuck
Mm.
into that party memorably.
2011, I remember.
Yes. Okay. So that was my first time at Sundance. And I did get to see Diane, your film, and it was fantastic. And I also cried and had a panic attack because I also have a child, a young child. It's cool. It's cool. AI, it's cool. But yeah, I feel like there was a lot of it almost felt like there was too much space on Main Street because the last time I had been at Sundance, they didn't close it off to cars. It was when I was running that Blumhouse lab with K Period
Yeah.
Media and Sundance was advising on it. So we brought all the writers to see all the midnight movies. It was the Talk to Me year. So it was bizarre because it felt like weirdly spacious where I was like, I have like a 6 foot radius with no one in my
Mm.
bubble. And that felt a little like off to me, I guess. It felt a little off because I was expecting it to feel really cramped based on the
Mhm.
pre-street closure year. But yeah, I feel like the films were just really strong this year. I mean, I can't tell you the number of things I've heard about everyone's film on this panel. And and these are just from random people again, because I do love to chatter. So I feel like the program was really strong this year. Maybe Minette, it is because they had to choose less films. I hate to say that, but yeah, and the films I did get to see were incredibly strong. Like I was crying, I was laughing. Really enjoyed the program this year.
Great. Well, speaking of less theaters, less films, so there was between the episodic series and the films, 90 plus films and episodic series premiered. And only about a dozen came with distribution, which is a little on the lower side. Um, but we're kind of we're at the end of the festival, and there's only been three acquisitions so far, or four, sorry, four. Sony Classics has picked up two, including Kim's film. A24 picked up Olivia Wilde's film for 10 million. That's been the big sale. And then Neon picked up Leviticus out of Midnight. Diane, your film came in with distribution with Focus. And so I'd love to hear, for those without distribution, what were the conversations with your sales agents and your teams going into the festival? This is not new. Last year was very similar. By the end of the festival, like it's slowing down, but how are sales agents articulating the market at this moment? Mynette?
Well, UTA is selling our film, Jess Cantor, and she was very enthusiastic about it, and which is really nice to have that support. Um, and it's we can't but remain optimistic about selling our films. I had a film called Rosemead that premiered at Tribeca, the last Tribeca, 6 months ago, and it was a terrible experience trying to sell that movie, and get it out there, and just seeing what prices are being offered, for a film starring Lucy Liu, Um, and so I went into this one not having huge expectations, because I just know what the marketplace is like and trying to find a silver lining. But, of course, if every year there's a handful of films that get a good sale.
Mhm.
But the definition of a good sale nowadays is like a lot less than it used to be, right?
Yeah.
So you're lucky if somebody like takes your movie and commits decent P&A to it, right? And there's a lot of very rich distributors offering tiny MGs or zero license fees right now. So yeah, it's a really dark time. And I'm trying to think of something positive to say, but
It's
maybe
okay.
by the end of this panel I will think of something to say. But yes, obviously, it's funny because like I said, I joined this film in 2020. That was a different era, right?
Yeah.
That was the beginning of the pandemic. And these films take so long to make. And by the time they're done and you're premiering it, the marketplace has changed, but you still have this movie that you made and you have to sell it, you have to figure out a way to get it out there because that is all we ever want as filmmakers is for audiences to see our films.
Yes. Okay, no, for real, I think I fixed the chat this time, so somebody try it out. Sorry. I don't do a lot of webinars anymore. The last one was Sundance last year. Anyway, well, Kim, there we go. Yay, good job. And thank you to the person who gave me the tip. Kim, from your perspective, by the end, were one of the few with a sale, which is like got to be the best feeling. But going in, what was the conversations before?
Definitely. The last feature that I produced was the same director, but it was a $1 million film that we shot with a half indigenous, half black non-actress in Buffalo. You know what I mean? Like non-union. And so we knew you know, the MGs would be, and obviously the industry has changed for the worse even since then. But we were I always say it's like my background is line producing very
Mhm.
proudly. I'm a very proud I would be like a Hollywood line producer if I had way more energy, but I am like the crypt keeper inside and I just cannot be doing all of that. But I'm very proud of my background and I feel like budgets are always really tough to balance with the creative and stuff. And with Hachan, it's such a big film. There are choreographed dance sequences. We recreate Dirty Dancing. We do covers of Dirty Dancing songs that are like pretty big, expensive
Yes.
music cues and stuff. And so, going in, we were very lucky because our investors, we have two investors, our investors were just so supportive of the creative and very they're very happy with the sale that we made, but we were just really lucky because we didn't have the same level of pressure as on previous films about MGs and like making it an immediate situation. We were more focused on, theatrical and kind of like Rinko's performance getting
Yeah.
the laurels that we think it deserves. And so, I feel like we drank the Kool-Aid, obviously. I feel like there's a part of me that's like there's the line producer in me that's like, no, the money and like nothing makes sense and everything is to be cheap. And then there's the part of me that's like the producer that just drinks the Kool-Aid every time and is like, this film is the special one. And like, we are cult leaders and people will join our cult because it's the best one. So it's kind of those two, the angel and the demon, but yeah, it's always rough for
I
sure.
mean, I
Our
watched it last
commerce is
night.
rough.
I watched it last night, and the line producer in you is there. I texted Kim this morning, and I said, "I don't. You've stretched that money further than anybody I think has ever stretched money on a movie, and just the music cues alone. It was a really delightful watch." Sarah, how about your film? Like Sarah won't be offended by this, but I say that Sarah is the producer who makes weird movies. She's like the weird movie producer in the best, and I mean that in the most endearing best way. And but you have that kind of movie, but and then in the doc space. And so, what was the conversations with your teams going in?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, first of all, this is one of my least weird movies, I guess, in that like this is the first one my parents actually have liked. So
Oh,
it's a little bit more accessible possibly than some of the more like highbrow stuff that I'm maybe known for. But yeah, I think this is I was counting and counting, including shorts. This is my 10th film at Sundance, and I
wow.
started my first feature sold in 2018, which was like maybe the last year of the old way or something like that.
Mhm.
And so, I've taken many films through, but most of the time it's been in the marketplace that everybody's lamenting. So my experience of Sundance for the most part is like being told that it's bad
Yeah.
and me being like, I only had one good year and it was my first year, so it felt bad because I was stressed. So to me, like, we went in with a realistic point of view. Our sales team were really they're incredibly excited about the movie and they've been on for since before we knew we were at Sundance. But they were very clear with us, don't expect some sort of like massive deal with some giant company. This movie's gonna sell and it's gonna get out there and people are gonna see it, but like we don't know what that deal's gonna look like. And I guess to me that's great. Like first of all, my team, we've been working on this for a really long time, and we talked a lot internally before coming to Sundance about what our goals are. And our goals are for this film specifically is to make sure as many people can have access to it as possible. So for us, theatrical is wonderful and a great marketing tool for the film, but it's not our like top priority. For us, the most important thing is that the film is being shown with audio description, with captions, across like really easy for people to see, because we really want the story to get out there. So for us, being able to tell our sales team that, and then hearing that is really valuable. And yeah, I mean, we're not expecting to get offers tomorrow, but we are expecting to get them in the next couple of months. But in my experience, even with my weirder films, to use Rebecca's language, it really takes a little while. And the the worst thing that you can do to yourself is frame, to me, it's like the worst thing I can do to myself is frame it as like this is bad, because I don't
Yeah.
actually have the experience that maybe some people remember where it was good. It's like selling movies out of Sundance has always been a difficult thing to do if you're looking to make your money back. Now, if you're looking to find like really valuable creative partners on the distribution side, I've had really wonderful success there. And I am seeing that, like, while we aren't getting a lot of MG offers these days, I'm noticing that like we're getting a lot more where it's like a 50-50 split with a distributor, which in sometimes that feels worse right at the gate, but then you're incentivizing everyone to figure out how to make the most out of the release. And in theory, that actually can get you places financially that maybe an MG actually doesn't, because in my experience, I've had MG deals where they're actually they're much worse for the investors, and the long tail is so slow, and there's all these fees built into those MG deals, and that it's sort of exponentially paid back to the distributor, that you're actually seeing things so much later. You're seeing your return so much later than if you do a 50-50 split and everybody's working together to get the movie out there. So, Mynette, that's my attempt to reframe some of the frustration with
I
positivity.
I
But
know I appreciate that so much, is because it's
yeah,
what we did with Rosemead, to be honest, like
yeah,
we didn't have a big upfront MG, but like all of us pitched in and really like got the community around, the Asian American community around to support that film. And it was hard work. That's the thing though. It's like,
yeah.
it's hard,
I
it's like
guess
you work on a movie for 8 years and then like, oh, I gotta work on it another year.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
I've
exhausting.
never not had it be hard work. So I guess
Yeah.
that's the part where I'm like, oh, the days, like I hear the lore of the days when you just like get a check
Hand it off.
and then you'd
Yeah.
hear later that everybody thought and loved it. And that just never has happened for me. I do think it's important to like kind of reframe the conversation around these splits, that it's not like a second tier
Yeah.
deal, or like,
Yeah.
that it's like not sad or something, because it really isn't. Like, I mean, I'm hearing about the films that are getting these kinds of deals, and they're the films that are also getting nominated for big awards.
Mhm.
So like, it doesn't need to feel like you've lost if that's what you're signing on for.
Yeah.
I definitely don't feel that way about any of the films I've released. And I've had lots of different deal structures in the past, and I'm excited to see kind of what we do with Joy Bubbles, because for us, the thing that's different for me is that, we aren't like insisting on a massive theatrical only. There's lots of ways for this movie to get out into the world. So that'll be really interesting.
I like the idea of the lore. I have been in this business longer than I think about, but I started going to Sundance when I worked in acquisitions at Lionsgate, and that was like started 2003. And so like I have seen the full spectrum of the peak and the valleys, and so yeah, you hold on to something that once was, but I think, I teach, Mynette teaches, Kim's just started teaching, like we're in these spaces at labs and universities with emerging filmmakers, and we really have to be forward thinking and accepting where we are now and how do we make it better versus the constant like, oh, I wish it was. Like we are past that. And so we have to tell ourselves the same things we tell our students. Diane, I have two questions for you that are not related. One person in the Q&A had said, did Diane say suscipient technology? That is the first time I've heard that used in a sentence. So is that something you said? And then also, with this conversation, you were one of the films that came in with distribution, and there's always and I have been one of these people who say the festival shouldn't program anything with distribution, which I have changed my mind on, but I would love for you to talk about like why it is also necessary for some films with distribution already in place to come to the festival, and maybe talk about like when did they come on board the process.
Yeah. So I think for question number one, I think what I said was it's literally a Sisyphean task, like making this movie. It was like push the rock up the hill, the rock falls down. Like it was just a near constant, like feeling like we weren't getting anywhere, which is partly why it took so long. And, we have an amazing team of collaborators sort of and brains working on this thing. But it's the subject matter is just so deep and widespread. It's very hard to sort of try to unpack that and make it not feel like a PowerPoint presentation,
Yeah.
but also make it feel like you're watching a movie, because at the end of the day, we make movies, right? And hopefully we're entertaining people or inspiring them and educating them all at the same time. I think in terms of distribution, I mean, first of all, I'll just say like, I've had a handful of films at Sundance. I've never come out of that festival or this festival with like a big sale, like despite all of the, success I've had. So I am deeply aware of what it means to have a film that doesn't have distribution, have to figure out how to put it out independently and just the near ending task for producers and filmmakers to just constantly like find audiences and get people to show up in theaters. I don't have that, that challenge is like different on this one. We have other challenges. Focus came on, pretty early. We had like a grant to kind of kickstart our research. And then, the Daniels they have a deal there. And so when we partnered all together, they were the first people that had access to the idea and the partnership. And basically they wanted in. And so in that respect, it was, we were sort of set up that way. I mean, I will just say that like, and that's, an incredible opportunity to have, right? Like to have a big theatrical partner like Focus who can put this film in theaters and get people to really show up. Because what we're noticing from the screenings here and even our test screenings is that, the film is like anxiety inducing enough and sort of like you have a lot of questions and you actually do want to see it with a group of people. Like there is something beautiful about being in community with human beings and then the lights come up and then you get to talk about, this technology and the film. Our sort of tasks and our challenges were really like we thought we budgeted and made a film to be like sort of done and out in the world in a year. And it took almost 3. And so, in the documentary space, I mean, this is the hardest thing. It's like there's no script, there's no path. You sort of like create one and then you're kind of running down rabbit holes constantly. And then as a producer, you're constantly pivoting, like, how do we make an edit that was supposed to be maybe, 8 months last like 25 or whatever it is, right? Like, I mean, we cut the film for almost 2 years. With 2 amazing editors, Daisha Broadway and Davis Coombe, and incredible like staff of people sort of working on the story. And I think now our challenge is just, we'll have access, but it's just getting people to theaters too is, you might have a theatrical, but then at the end of the day, you got to get people to show up and watch the film. So we still have a lot of work to do.
In talking about there being like less venues this year, less films, there's also a decrease in press attending festivals, and even covering them at all. And so I was talking with my students this week about, does the general movie-going audience even pay attention to press? But yet distributors really weigh the press and critics reviews coming out of the festival. And so I'd love to get some takes on, the importance of press. How did you work with your press teams? Mynette, we were kind of going back and forth about it from the international perspective. Do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the press is going through the same thing we artists are going through. Like they're getting decimated, no one's getting paid salaries to write anymore. No one's on staff. It's all a bunch of freelancers getting paid, $10 per article or something. So I really empathize with them. And so, every Sundance, there's less and less critics being assigned reviews. And so if they're not being paid to write reviews, they're only gonna write, watch 5 movies and write those 5 reviews. And, so they're gatekeepers in a way because distributors always want to read the reviews before they decide to buy a movie. And you're kind of shit out of luck if you're not in US competition because those films get favored for reviews. So my film, The Huntress, being in world cinema dramatic, it's hard. It was hard for our publicists who are great. Cinetic is our publicist. They got a Hollywood Reporter review, which is like a big deal for a world cinema title, and they're trying to get more trade reviews, but it's difficult, the next category also sort of gets short shrift when it comes to reviews. So it's a challenge, and it's getting harder every year because there's less and less critics, less and less press to write these things, and yet distributors still rely on them. So I'm hoping that they will use alternative things like Letterboxd, to take the temperature on reactions. So yeah.
Sarah, how about for your film, which like didn't have cast to carry
Right.
someone showing up? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a really interesting experience this year. And this is my first feature doc at Sundance. And so, in the past, I've definitely had a really different on the ground experience at Sundance with reviews and coverage. Like last year, the film had Juliette Lewis and Samantha Mathis and Robin Tunney and Mamadou Akchi, and we had just like an amazing cast on the ground to do the interviews and the photo studios and all this stuff. And this year, like our subject of the film, he is no longer alive. So the team representing the movie was our director Rachel Morrison and our producing team, which great. But like I was joking, it's like we're we're indoor kids. Like we're not trying to like we're not wearing crazy outfits. Really, we're making documentaries, so it's not like anybody's clamoring down to get my photo on the cover of whatever publication. So it was the first year where most of our press we did before the festival, and we did it virtually. And then we had, plenty of press on the ground, but it wasn't like the 2 day scuttling from studio to studio that I'd done in the past. And I was, talking to our PR team about why is that, what's going on. And there was a mixture of, that's kind of not as common for docs, especially the kind of archival doc that we have. And then also that there are just fewer people on the ground, like Mynette said, like you've been saying, it was like a much more scant turnout, and that a lot of people were covering virtually, which I have mixed feelings about in general, the virtual element of the festival. And, for us, like, yeah, we were doing a solid amount of interviews and coverage, and we got some really nice pieces out of our screenings, but that like it was a little bit more of an uphill battle than I thought it should be, frankly. And I'm really curious as we go forward. Like the other piece is like, something that is always advised is your festival press is different than your theatrical release press. So like our festival press is covering the director's story and the background, and we want to get those key reviews, but we're not trying to get like a big feature in the New Yorker out of Sundance, because they're only, let's say they cover the film, they're only going to cover it once, and we want them to cover it when the money's going to the film and not to like a festival, no offense, but like that's kind of, you want to save it for your big release. And so our team was really thoughtful about that too, and not overly pitching it, so that when the film does actually get distribution and come out, that we haven't like used up all of our press opportunities in advance. And so I think because our film is about tech and also about disability and also about like human interest, there's all these sort of non-industry outlets that we are sort of saving to pitch to for when the time comes. And we have some writers who've been fans of the film and tracking the film that we said like, wait, don't cover it yet, we're not ready. So but yeah, I mean, we are trying to get coverage about like being the first film to ever do open audio description screenings at Sundance, and like really that is a big deal. And really, I think it went really well. People seem to really enjoy those screenings. But we really do want to be pushing that, and we still are doing more on that front. So
Sorry, can I just add to my previous comment, because Sarah just jogged my what I wanted to say, which is that when you have there's gatekeepers throughout this entire industry, right? And so like if you have the gatekeeper of the trade editor deciding which films get reviewed, and they're not assigning Joy Bubbles, which we has a protagonist from with differing abilities. If they're not assigning my film, which has a Mexican female protagonist, like distributors are less apt to buy these films, less of them make it out to audiences, and then there's less empathy for people from other cultures and abilities, and then we're in this state of the country that we are in right now, right? And so I just kind of want to make that connection with that there's like a systems wide thing that sometimes goes against underrepresented stories. So yeah.
Well, and I think you can't, and not everyone knows this, but the majority of industry publication is owned by one company. I mean, Penske owns or has part stake in Variety, Deadline, IndieWire, Hollywood Reporter, Billboard, Rolling Stone, and also South by Southwest. And so, like,
And they
there's
run the
one
Golden
agenda.
Globes too. They own the
And
Golden
the Golden
Globes.
Globes
Yeah.
now. So it's like you got to also keep that in perspective that it is turned into a little monopoly, which also then makes it challenging. And so they're looking at they don't need every publication publishing the same stuff, where used to be more even competition, you could say, in the own press space that just doesn't exist anymore. Diane, to kind of Sarah's point, of not doing too much press now to save it later. I mean, this is also the point of why films with distribution play festivals. It's like your festival is part of your release strategy, and so how is the festival being used to kind of kick off the release of your film?
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously, I think, for documentary, there's like almost no better place to launch your film at the beginning of the year than Sundance, right? And even just looking at, and look, this film is not part of that, and whatever. But like, the five documentaries that are now nominated this year all came out of Sundance last year.
Yeah.
So films especially for the doc space, films that start Sundance are able to have a long tail for people to like sort of find these films over the year. So if you're able to kind of like, thread that needle or be able to premiere at Sundance, it's just a great launch pad for people to like discover the film, right? So, we're launching at Sundance. We're playing at South by. We're hoping to have some other, international play for the film at some point at some point in the spring. Hopefully, we'll see. And then, and then we are in theaters in March on March 27th, and that was a conversation we had. I mean, we were trying to finish this film way before Sundance. We wanted it to be ready for Sundance last year, and then we thought we would be done with the film at some point in the year. And then it just so happened that we just kept editing and editing and editing and editing, and then it was like, well, here we are. So let's maybe see if we can thread this needle. Um, so, I think what's great about the festivals is that you get some core audience people, you get core people who love docs, you can kind of hit your core. South by will be great because the tech community is there. And then, getting it out at the end of March feels really just important and timely because, we even say it in the movie, by the time the film comes out, half of the things we talk about are either going to have moved on or have evolved, right? So, the timeliness of what we're trying to do was of the utmost importance in that sense, But just to say too, I mean, because I have been on film teams where we did have, distribution. And I think for all films, Sundance having a lane for that, I actually really appreciated this year that they saved all of the premieres for films that had distribution till the second half of the festival. Like that makes sense to me. It's like get all, everybody's there that first weekend, get all the buyers, get all the films that don't, like get attention for those films. And then hopefully if people stick around and are able to then see some of the premieres, right? Because, our industry, whether you have distribution or whether you don't have distribution, is under a great deal of stress. And so it's like I feel really strongly about supporting everyone, right? Like if you have distribution, go to a theater and support those films. If you know a film that doesn't, get to those festivals, watch those films, help build those audiences, and then find those films that have independent distribution because we all have to like hold hands right now and figure out a way to keep the trains running.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. And because I think Premieres was originally created for that intent, and then it got a little murky. My film, I'll See You in My Dreams, played 2015, and it was a $500,000 movie with no distribution, but it was in premieres, but it was a Tuesday night. And like most people leave Tuesday day or for Wednesday, the big acquisition executives. And so we were fine because that was 2015 was a good year for sales. But that shift I think was really important that I clocked. Too. Sarah, do you want to just tell us what you put in the chat?
Oh yeah, I put in the chat just like when so I saw somebody saying something about like make your own press in the chat, and I was talking about something our team thought of that I thought was really brilliant was Joy Bubbles was using the phones in a lot of creative ways, and our team made a phone line for our film where if you call you can get showtimes, you can get a little bit of a sneak peek of the audio description. You can get hear a little bit of Joy Bubble's voice, but you can also leave us a message. And it's a way for us to collect feedback. And, if we're not, I mean, we are getting press that I'm really happy about, but if we are in a situation where we want more, suddenly we have this audience feedback that we can pull from. And, it's also just a really nice way for us to engage with the people who are seeing the film. So that was something I thought was really brilliant and really fun. We're having a lot of fun with it. We're getting messages. So
well, and I think it also is helpful in keeping you motivated, as you go through this sales process of like just the reminder of people are really loving our movie is very helpful when it's hard to get these movies made and out into the world.
Right. And we're collecting our own data, I mean,
right.
it's like small and anecdotal or whatever,
Yep.
but it's still real.
Yep.
And I did want to jump and say something about festival premieres for films with distribution and without, is that I do run a film festival here in LA called the LA Festival of Movies. And something that I've experienced is that, like, festivals need that mixture of both of those things as well to like stay going, like that the combo of films that have distribution that are using the festival as a launch pad, that might be a little more higher profile, or like just an easier draw for somebody who's less risk taking, where it's like, oh, this movie is already going to come out, but my goal is to see it first and I want to be a tastemaker. That combo with, like, maybe that gets people in the door, that gets you the press you need as a festival to get coverage. And then once you get everybody in the door, then you can give them all the weird stuff that is like really discovery. And so, like, and I think that shape is true for all festivals that I've seen, for in one way or another. So Sundance does it, but so does the LA Festival of Movies, which is a 12 film festival that takes place over a weekend. So we're really very different in scope, but the shape in that way remains the same. And that we've found that films with distribution really find, like, without the launch pad of something to kind of talk about, it's a lot harder to get a movie released with fanfare. So that's just to address that as well.
When Kim, I'm going to change the subject a little bit and ask, we're all here, you're all here talking about your films and all you're doing for your films. And I'd love for you guys to talk about how you as a producer use your festival for you as a producer. How do you, and I know Kim, you'll say you have a hard time with that, but how are you pitching yourself and your next projects and your slate? Dan, you're building a whole company, your people are raising funds, like, you're so busy running around with your movie, but are you able to, and if you're not able to, what should you be doing, or what should you be doing at upcoming festivals? Because all of you with a film at Sundance is going to play more festivals. What is a strategy that producers can take, whether it's a big Sundance festival or Toronto, or it's LA Festival of Movies, or if it's the Cleveland Film Festival, which is my favorite local festival? Like, what do you do to help your career?
Totally. I'm gonna say something that I hope no one rolls their eyes at me. It sounds very kumbaya-ish, but my spirit animal is like an otter. Like, I am truly here for the vibes. I am here to be like in a group of people playing in the water, like vibing essentially. And so I actually think the thing that has helped me the most is that I am actually happy for other people and their success.
Mm.
Like, genuinely, I genuinely am. And I'm genuinely rooting for my colleagues and work friends, like truly, even when we're competing with each other. And I think that's really helped me. I also don't withhold information from other producers if they ask me a direct question, or like are hinting that they want to know to something. I'm like, this is what I know. Like, I will give you the info, like whatever. And so I really find that, like, a spirit of generosity it really creates a good sense of community also, because it's so dark and producing is a team sport. But yeah, this festival was great because I got to reconnect with a bunch of investors that I have known. And then also I met a couple of new ones, and it was through my producing friends who also had films in the festivals. And it wasn't something I really sought out. It just happens naturally because I think people can feel that I really do root for them. And I know that might sound very Pollyanna-ish, but again, I'm here for the vibes, man. I grew up blue collar. I am just happy to have a house that I live in. You know what I mean? I mean, doing something that I like. So, yeah, I don't know.
I invited you because you help with the vibes. So how about that? I know that about you. So, Mynette, what are you doing, for yourself as a producer when you're at these festivals?
I try to go to parties, if I have the energy to, just to honestly, just to like show my face and say, "Hey, I'm here," and to remind people that I'm here, and to have them think of me. Like I've gotten so sick of parties. I mean, I like parties sometimes, but there was one point in my career, I think it was like around 2016, where I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so tired of parties. I don't want to talk to anybody." I get asked the same questions. So what I started doing was around that time, just like going to a lot of parties and walking around the room and saying hi to everybody, not talking to them, just to, inception, like here's my face. Think of me when you want to finance a film or you need a producer or whatever. But now this Sundance was fun because I actually like it was a reunion of sorts, people from all walks of my film life and just saying hello to them and having nice conversations with them, not just talking about the business. But yeah, it's funny because like most Sundance and most festivals are all about the director and all about, there's all these people who are like, oh, want to see your film. They're like, oh, can I see a link so I can hire a director for the next thing, And it's always about the director. It's always like, oh yeah, and we want to meet with you. We're tracking your director. We're not interested in this film, but maybe they'll make the next film with us. It's never about us. It's never about, oh, we want to see the film and see what you're capable of. It's like, can we poach your director now that you've like broken them in,
Yes.
if they're like the debut feature, which
Yeah.
is fine. I'm used to it, and most thankfully most of my directors would try to bring me on board to their next project, which is nice. But they can't always do that, right? Because their directors for hire. But yeah, I mean, you do what you can. You just network and like try to meet investors and, you know, have some FaceTime with the distribution executives and press and whatnot, and just like make sure people know that hey, I'm still here. Give me a call. You have some money to give to me.
I, managed the Sundance Producing Lab for many years, and when I was there, I came up with a new rule for both me and the fellows who were attending, which was you had to you had to, but only had to meet three new people. So that meant like it forced you to meet three new people, but that by the time you did, you could also go home, right? So it was
Yeah.
like it worked both ways because you would get tired. It's like, but I did my three, I can go now. So, and also when I was younger, there was a 3 drink rule, but now I don't, I'm older, I don't drink that
Yeah.
much.
Oh,
So,
another really
yes.
good rule is Irish goodbye. Always Irish goodbye. Just
Irish
get the hell out of
goodbyes.
there.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Sarah, what, to Mynette's point, you've both been a part of launching careers, you've stayed with filmmakers throughout their careers. Like how are you using the festival to bolster your work as a producer?
I think it's changed a lot over the years. When I was first coming out, I was younger and more energetic and could stay up a lot later. And I would use the festival as a way to really like be out meeting people. I would tell my teams and friends that are there, like when I'm at these things, I have to be kind of a shark. I have to keep moving. I have to be solo. Like I can't. I'd get really overwhelmed by like trying to hit everything and see everybody and take all the invitations I received really seriously. And now I'm a little older. I've been doing this for a little longer, and I guess I did that, and I don't have to do that anymore. So now it does feel like to me it's an opportunity to see friends that I don't live in the same city, or even like now I don't go out that much at home either. So I also have a young child, and so going out is harder. But like yeah, it's definitely a place where it's like, oh, good, you're going to be there. We can hang out, we can catch up. And I did get to do that a little bit this year. But then also at the same time, and I think it's a really great place to kind of connect with my director for the film, which is like knowing just how overwhelming it can be, especially if you have a first time director, and how much attention and focus is being put on your director when they're there. Um, to Mynette's point, I haven't really found it to be a valuable place for me as a producer to get like more work in sort of a direct way. Like it's maybe in an indirect way, maybe in kind of a long and meandering way, it's led to things. But no meeting I've ever taken at a festival just for me to like meet someone has led to something that
Mm.
I've done. Like it's either like I'm hanging out, I'm having a good time, I'm making a friend who then that later leads to something, or I'm supporting my director and my film team and making sure that like my film team is feeling really like not as not lost as possible, basically. Those are the two things that I think I really focus on, and both of them are clearly like supporting my own career in that way, but maybe less obviously, like less networky explicit, because I think to Minette's point, no one really cares about us at these things. So
Diane, I feel like, having recently stood on the Oscar stage a couple years ago, you're kind of a person in the room that a lot of people know and recognize. How are you using this space are you trying to build new relationships, just foster the existing ones, just be there for the vibes? Like, what's your approach at the festival?
I mean, it's not a sexy answer, but the reality is that fancy trophy doesn't always in the doc
Yep.
space, or maybe in the producer space, or maybe in the female space. I'm going to be really controversial here, but if you know me, you've
Yep.
seen me fall into a deep burnout depression in the last few years, recovering. You'll know that it doesn't always change your life. It certainly allows you to meet more people. But the truth is, every single movie is a startup and a startup company, and you go back to the bottom. And
Yep.
the day that Navalny was nominated for an Oscar in 2023, I was premiering King Cole at the
Mm.
film at the festival with Shane, who also was on Navalny. That had nothing. That literally had no bearing on whether we sold that film or not. And the film ultimately went to POV after the festival. But so I mean, I think for me, it's like I'm doing what everybody else is doing. I'm trying to meet people or meet new people or reconnect with people, talk about what we have going on. I mean, I have a producing partner at Fishbowl Films with Mel Miller. And what's great about the two of us is that we're really good at dividing and conquering. And we've been together for so long. We have like a secondhand sort of communication. So, I was obviously like deeply immersed in AI doc, and, Mel had a lot more sort of free time to go like have meetings with people. But we're looking, we're all the sustainability of this industry is so like precarious right now that we're not in much better position, to be really honest with you. I mean, last year was terrible, and most of the work we were doing was development work. And if you know anything about the space, development work doesn't really pay you as a producer. You might get a few shekels, but you better be working on, everyone's like, you have such a big slate, like this is amazing. And I'm like, yeah, would you like to know how many of these projects aren't paying me and how much of my daily work time is being used trying to further them? And like, I'm not complaining. Like, I love what I do. I like am deeply passionate about it, but I am not here to pretend that this is any easier, because it's just simply not for most of us. However, having said that, I recognize that like I have an ability to like knock on doors and call people, and
Yeah.
and sometimes that leads to other things. And so whether you're in my position or in a position where you're younger or just starting out, like part of coming to these festivals is just getting yourself in front of people, going to parties, standing in line for movies or on the shuttle. Like the people you meet in the most random places at Sundance are the reason why Sundance is such a great festival, right? Is that it's not a big and sprawling and spread out city. It's little, and like you can have direct access. I had a young filmmaker meet me out of a panel on Sunday, and I had a meeting on Main Street, and I said, "Hey, why don't you get in an Uber with me? I've got to go to Main Street. We can connect and chat, and like I can talk to you about your project." And then this is like a classic Sundance story. We get to up by Main Street, up by the roundabout. Traffic is terrible. I'm like, let's just like pop out and we can walk. And we pop out and we start walking. And 10 seconds later, I'm like, I feel really light. And I'm like, oh Jesus, I left my phone in Uber. And then traffic is so bad. I could run up Main Street and find the Uber roundabout, and the guy
Still
was
there.
just pulled in. And I was like, and he gave me my phone, and I was just like, I love Sundance. Thanks so much. Also lost my driver's license at a party, even though
Diane.
it was in a pocket it was the one pocket I didn't look at. Like, guys,
Are
I
you
don't know.
are you a director or a producer? Because directors do that.
Yeah, it was a beauty this year.
Well, to your point, we've already hit our hour. I could talk to you guys forever. I do want to ask one more question before we leave. To your point, Diane and Manette, saying you not want to be too hard, dark on things, but it is hard. And I tell my students, I'm not going to lie to you, right? We're going to talk about the business. We're going to talk about the truth. We're going to learn about the past to know why it's not working now. But I will help you find the rays of light. And I think that's what's really important. So I'd like to kind of end with that question. What is your ray of light, your North Star that you kind of keep an eye on? Because, I also said to my students this week, like, it's important for me that we make these movies, that we nurture filmmakers, that we support producers like yourselves. Like, these movies need to exist and get to people. And so the work is valuable, the movies are valuable. I want you all to keep going, and everyone in the chat who's making your films. And so, Mynette, what's your ray of light? You also teach and have these hard conversations.
Yeah, I always tell my students are always like, okay, they want to meet like, you know, the president of Neon and this
Yeah.
person and that person, like, really kind of just kind of connect with people above them. I'm like, you know what? That's not going to help you. Like, look to your peers, look to your left and your right, and look to your community. And that's what I've learned myself, even over the course of this year with Rosemead and looking to the Asian American community. With this film, with The Huntress, like nobody wanted to finance it in the US. Nobody wanted to do a Mexican Spanish language film. So the money came from Mexico, and not just the from the Mexican government, but from private equity investors.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like you got to look to your community, your immediate community. And obviously that's a lesson that goes beyond film now too, with Minneapolis and everything. And that's kind of where we have to sort of start. And then hopefully, build from that.
Mhm. Sarah?
I think for me, the thing that I go back to when I'm frustrated or underwhelmed or overwhelmed is like, that I do this because I love watching movies and I love like making the movies I make. I want to watch them. I want people to feel the way I feel when I watch them. So often when I'm feeling bummed out, it's like I just remember that usually it's like I haven't watched a good movie in a while. Like I haven't made time to sit down and watch something or go to the theater. So to me, yeah, something I've been doing a lot this year is going to see new films in the cinema. And it's been really fun and really reassuring. And, watching films for the LA Festival of Movies also really helps because I am constantly reminded how many really exciting filmmakers are out there, how many really exciting films are being made. The issue isn't that there are no good movies. And if anybody says that, I get angry. When I was a freshman in college, I was taking my first like film studies class and I was angsty and I said, well, the thing is like movies aren't as good as they used to be. And my TA was like, that is the dumbest, most like teenage thing that you don't know what you're talking about. That just
Yep.
shows me that you aren't watching things that are good and
Yep.
new. And I always think about that, that, if I'm feeling like there are no good movies, it's really just because I'm not looking. So for me, that always helps.
Yeah. Diane?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo kind of what has been said thus far, and just sort of add that, I gain inspiration from community, from watching movies, from, just sort of sticking it out. And it's like, and I love what I do, but I also think when you're feeling uninspired or exhausted by it, you have to take a break or you have to figure out what that break looks like for you, whether it's a week or a vacation or a just social battery reboot, or doing something totally different. I take like an adult art class and like I swear to God, it's like therapy. And then it like helps inform all the other work that we're doing and just kind of keep going.
Rounding out with Kim, what are your rays of light?
Honestly, it's the really specific audience reactions that will always stay with me. Like, because you'll as maybe an emerging producer, you have these dreams that like Neon's gonna pick up your film and then it like, d does all this stuff and like your aunts and your uncles and your cousins are all like, oh my God, you produced that movie that's on every screen in America. And it doesn't always happen. But also it's like sort of like the first movie I ever produced was this queer love triangle film called Those People. Kim Utani actually programmed at Outfest back in the day. And I saw through the director, because I'm not on the internet in the same way, like a TikTok fan video of this movie from like a young queer kid who had like watched the film in secret and like was reminiscing about watching the film. Or even with like Hachan, one night because I was so anxious I couldn't sleep, I read all of our letterbox reviews and I actually cried laughing at some of these reviews. So like no matter what happens with Hachan, the letterboxed person who wrote Japanese woman tries to fight addiction to sexy Latino men with dancing. Like loved it. There's so many other just reviews that I was literally crying, laughing in my little like bed. And that those really specific moments they do stay with me because it's like we really are not in a void. Like, we really are not. And especially if you catch an audience member in a very specific part of our time, like our film deals with grief, so we've had obviously some of the strongest reactions with people who have recently lost a loved one. But if you catch like younger people in a certain age, they will carry your film with them forever, and that's so special. So yeah, it's fun. It's a good time. It's a good time. Letterboxd is hilarious. I'm not actually on it, but I lurk. It's very fun.
Nice. Good. Well, my rays of light are all of you. I'm so privileged to know you and call you friends. And thank you so much for being here. Thanks for everyone in the chat. I also value all of you and your support of Dear Producer is why I keep doing it and how it keeps moving forward. It's great to have you all out on this Saturday. Thank you for your time. I think tickets are still available online if people haven't seen the films. Go support them. And round of applause for our producers. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks,
All right.
Rebecca.
Have a good
Thank
weekend.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.